Wel, bore da pawb. Braf gweld chi bore yma. So heddiw, today we are continuing our series on our 8 Gwreiddiau, our 8 roots, looking at Apostolaidd, the Apostolic. But first of all, a quick reminder, slide 2, George. Quick reminder of our Gwreiddiau so far, as we have had a week out with Father's Day last week. Brilliant talk, by the way. Do catch up on that. It wasn't me, don't worry. I wasn't being big-headed. And so our 8 Gwreiddiau, our 8 roots are, first of all, contending Gwreiddiau. This is like the pressure cooker of us pushing into prayer for breakthrough more. So we feel as though there is something for us as a community to grow more in this kind of pressure cooker, praying for breakthrough. Then there's glory carriers, Cludwyr Gogoniant. This is us hosting the presence of God more, entering his presence, dwelling there more. Third thing that we feel is spoken over us in this season is warrior spirit, Ysbryd Revelwyr. Taking a strong stance in our faith, knowing the importance of our posture as we fight with the Spirit of God behind us. Then there's bridge or bont, to pioneer ways to link people to the gospel and to reconcile between cultures. So being a bridge in our communities. There's the scattered, Arwasgar. Church is not just about Sunday, this gathered church, what we are here, but it is also out there. The other 3 days a week. We're here for a long time. 6.5 days of the week, the rest of the week out there as the scattered church. Then unity endured, pursuing a culture of honor that aims to understand and bring reconciliation through grace and love. Heddiw, today we are doing Apostolaidd, Apostolic. So felly mwy rwan. And then not next week, because we're on tour, the week after, Rach is going to finish our 8 Gwreiddiau on confidence in the gospel, hyder yn y Evangel. So that's where we've come from, that's where we're going. So, Apostolaidd, the apostolic. If you're new to church, you might be wondering, what on earth does that mean? To be quite honest, if you've been in church your whole life, you might be sat there going, what on earth does that mean? So slide 3, beth yw apostle? What is an apostle? Well, the term apostle appears a lot in the New Testament. We don't really use it in our day-to-day language, do we? But the term apostle appears a lot in the New Testament. The disciples who followed Jesus were known as the disciples, but they were also, we often refer to them as the apostles. In the New Testament letters, so those books after the Pedwar Evangelii, the 4 Gospels, those bit after that, we often see the writers of those letters starting by identifying themselves as an apostle. So next slide, we've got a few examples here. Rhyfyniad 1:1, yn deud, llyfr gan Paul, gwas y Messiah Iesu, dyw I wedi cael fy newis gan Dduw I fod yn gynrychiodd apostol, personol iddo, ac wedi cael fy anfon allan I rannu newyddion da Dduw. So notice here, the gynrychiodd personol is basically the way the Bible.net have translated it as a personal representative apostle. Or we look in 1 Corinthiad 1:1, yn deud, llyfr gan Paul wedi fy newis gan Dduw am galw I fod yn apostol i'r Messiah Iesu. Galatiaid 1:1, llyfr gan Paul, apostle i'r Messiah Iesu, a letter from Paul, an apostle. But it's not just Paul who kind of claims this title, it's Peter as well. In 1 Peter 1, 1 Pedar 1:1, llyfr gan Pedar, apostol Iesu Grist. So each time, the context is them claiming an identity of who they are and whose they are by simply saying that they are an apostle or what could be translated as a sent one, avonwyd un. They know their role is not to just sit with all they have seen and heard, sharing only with those, like in this room, that know Jesus in their small early church gatherings. No, they were a sent one. Next slide. Avonwyd un. With an intentionality to share the good news of Jesus. We also see the apostles talked about being an apostle is talked about in relation to the early church in Ephesians 4, verses 11 and 12, where Paul introduces the idea of these fivefold ministries. Has anyone ever heard of fivefold ministry? It's something that goes around a little bit. So here we go. Next slide. So now these are the gifts Christ gave to the church. The apostles, there it is, the prophets, the evangelists, and the pastors and teachers. Their responsibility is to equip God's people to do his work and build up the church, the body of Christ. So next slide. Here we see an apostle, as with the other ministries, are there to build up the church. And some people are more naturally, because of that, going to function as an apostle, because we all will have different personalities, different gifts. That means that we all do things in different ways, and we can bring things that are different to help build the church, to share the message of Jesus. Apostles tend to be these sort of people that are kind of a bit pioneering, cutting edge. They like to lead the charge into new spaces and places. They're likely kind of a little bit entrepreneurial. But then some people are going to function more as prophets and hear from God. Some more as carry the evangelical gift, so they will want to share the gospel of God wherever they go. Some are going to be more pastors, so they will want to journey with people, love people. While others are going to be more naturally drawn to teach and debate and wrestle over concepts. And although we all may have a primary gifting, something that we kind of feel more naturally we work best in, we can all function in each of these different ministry areas. This isn't kind of like, yep, I am this one, that means I do nothing else. Okay? It's not that. So for example, this is going to come as a shock to some of you, I am not the most natural pastor. Everyone that knows me laughs and says, ha ha ha, yes, we know. But I am not the most natural at pastoring. I really need to focus on listening well, and if I'm honest, it drains me a lot quicker than other things. My dad's small group are all sat there going, yep. Thanks, Steph. Anyway, as compared to somebody like Karen Sadler, who naturally pastoral, just oozes it, cares for people, knows what's going on with people so much easier. See, I would say that I am more naturally apostolic. I get energy from new ideas, pioneering new things, or with a little bit of teaching and discussion thrown in there too. Whereas people like the prophetic can often be wrongly be seen as just for the wacky people. Anyone notice that? And yes, although I will admit the primary function, if you are primary function prophetic, often you're on the wackier end of the spectrum. That's okay. Claim that. But it doesn't mean that people that are either don't think that they're like more spiritually open in that sense, and kind of they're just in a slightly different plane to a lot of people because they are so much more aware. Doesn't mean that like I can't hear from God. Doesn't mean that Kate can't hear from God. Doesn't mean that we can have a prophetic word. We all can. It maybe just doesn't come more naturally or be as clear. It's like me with pastoring. It's not natural for me. But we can all work on it, grow in it. We can all hear from God in the prophetic. We can all be an evangelist and share the good news of Jesus wherever we are. We can all be apostolic. Because in Ephesians 4, verse 16, Paul goes on to say this: He makes the whole body fit together perfectly, as each part does its own special work. It helps the other parts grow so that the whole body is healthy and growing and full of love. O yn Gymraeg, mae eglwys yn tyfu ac yn cryfhau mewn cariad with I bob ran wneud ei gwaith. This is a beautiful translation of it. Basically, it's saying the church grows and strengthens in love as each part does its work. As each part does its work, as each of these five-fold ministries work together, that is how the church grows and strengthens. So the key message I want you to take from this kind of little review of what the apostolic even is this: yes, some people are going to be more naturally apostolic in the sense of their primary gifting to build the church is going to be the apostolic. They're going to be pioneers, pursuing new things. But like all the other ministries, it is a rich tapestry that together build a healthy church. But we can all work in each of these 5 areas. We all need to carry each of these 5 areas at different times. For example, the apostle running ahead without any pastoring is going to lead ahead without anyone following. The apostle running ahead without a prophetic word to ground and shape and challenge is going to head off in some unusual directions sometimes. The evangelist, without a pastor, without a teacher to help disciple someone, will have loads of people come to know Jesus, but they will never follow into discipleship. They're really, really important, and that is where the apostolic sits, in this kind of area of we can all function in these ministries, but some will maybe carry it a little bit more. Okay, so we're up with where apostolic kind of sits, what sort of thing it maybe does a little bit. We'll come on to it a bit more. But let's go back to our Gwreiddiau, our roots. Because to be apostolic simply means to be a sent one, to know that you are sent into new spaces and places to pioneer and push forward the kingdom of heaven. But with our roots, the apostolic is part of our roots as a church. So what does that mean for Gwreiddiau? Because I understand that if it's like a person sent out to go and pioneer something new, that's an apostle. But what does it mean to be apostolic as a church? To have that over us as a whole. What is Gwreiddau's apostolic role? Well, I have some news for you. Gwreiddau is led by 2 apostles. Rach and I would say that our primary gifting that we carry, the main thing that we function and flourish in, is the apostolic, with kind of a healthy chunk of teacher in the mix too, especially for Rach. Rach is probably very much teacher apostle. I'm more apostle teacher. So the good news is that we as a church will never stay still. We will never settle for less than what we feel God is calling us into, because it's not in our nature. We won't sit still. We will keep on pursuing and pioneering. That's the apostle in us. The bad news is that we will never settle and sit still. Sorry. But fortunately, we do make sure that we have a great mix of the 5-fold ministries in our leadership and in our staff teams, so that we don't just make everyone very exhausted and overloaded with facts from teaching and just kind of doing new stuff all the time. But for us as a church, because of this kind of me and Rach carrying the apostolic calling over our lives, there is something for us as a church community that is being spoken over us as a collective about pioneering and pushing forward the kingdom of heaven into new spaces and places. And I think that here on Ynys Môn, we are really well placed for that. See, next slide. We should be on slide 10. Ynys Môn is known as Môn Mam Cymru. You might have seen this sign as you come over the bridge. This is on the Menai Bridge. So, Môn Mam Cymru, or Anglesey, the mother of Wales. Because once upon a time, its fertile lands were considered that it could provide sufficient food for the whole of Cymru, for the whole of Wales. And that's obviously not the case anymore. We can't feed 4 million people from our land. But, we sense that there is something, and we've had a number of words spoken over us, that this Morn Mam Cymru is gathering momentum again, not in food production, although my 3 Mockingbach, my 3 little pigs, are going to be great, yet in a spiritual atmosphere. So Anna Hughes, when she came to speak, shared a word that she feels for us on Anglesey, but specifically for us at Gwreiddiau around the importance of Ynys Môn for the next move of God in our nation. She talked about the cogs that are turning, and that there is an important first cog of Ynys Môn to begin moving that then will turn the other cogs of the move of the Spirit that will cascade through Wales and actually through the Celtic nations. And eventually Lloegr, England, might actually pick some of this up. But there is something around this big claim of this first move of the Spirit really beginning, the cogs starting to turn in that. And it is a massive claim. It is a huge thing. There is a weight that we all, not just me and Rach, not just our leadership team, that we all need to take seriously. Like, as a church, we are seeing our capacity growing, not just to build Lighthouse Empire, not just to build this space, but always seeking to serve, encourage, and engage to build up the whole church across the island, Cymru, and beyond. For example, next week, rather than cancelling our gathering because we can't have the venue, the football club's using it, we're going to take the opportunity to go out to other churches to honour and engage with them by sending you lot out to go and join with them, to go worship with them, pray with them, encourage them, to go cheer them on. Because you guys are awesome, and you're going to carry something into their atmosphere, into their services that is going to give them a lift. The week before last, Rach and I hosted a church leader barbecue. So we invited some key people that we have connected with who lead churches on the island just round and their families for a barbecue to catch up. Phil Bradbury expertly cooked the barbecue for us. Top man. To simply love and serve the other church leaders, because leading the church can be a tough gig at times. You guys are great, don't worry about it. But it can be a tough gig. And we wanted to come alongside them, encourage and equip them to flourish. Rach, 2 weeks ago, was asked to lead part of the New Wine Cymru conference, and is being regularly asked to join radio shows and podcasts to talk about church planting in Wales, especially within a Cymru Cymraeg, a Welsh-speaking Welsh culture. And into that, we're seeing these links, the bridge between cultures, again, that we as a church are holding some of that middle ground. Me and Rach regularly meet with other church leaders from across North Wales to encourage them, pray with them, build unity, and share what is happening. There are loads of opportunities for us as a church to engage, equip, and resource the wider church, especially across North Wales. And some of it we're not quite there yet. Some of it feels as though we're a long way away from actually seeing that come to fruition. But some of it we are starting to see happen. But we get the sense that God is beginning to build us as a community into an apostolic resource for the region. Wouldn't it be great one day to be able to send a resource to help other churches with worship, with sending some of our amazing speakers, content, maybe to host larger events in a different space to this? Of course, we're already starting to see some of it happen as well, especially around the bilingual. We have a lot of church leaders, especially English church leaders, that are saying we have Welsh people in our community and we want to help them connect their heart language to their spiritual language. How do we do it? And they're coming to ask what we're up to. And we say, well, we're a long way from getting it right. But here's some of the stuff that we've learned along the way. Quite a bit of this is likely Rachel and myself stepping into more of this role. And we are very aware of our limited time capacity to be able to do this. So we're trying to be sensible with what we say yes and no to. But I suppose I simply wanted to say to you That we as a church feel as though we have a role to support and build up other churches, not just our own. And to do this, it means that we do need releasing at times to be able to do that. It might mean that some of our investment goes into that. Some of our resource of our leadership time won't directly be seen here all the time. And that can feel like a bit of a sacrifice. But I just wanted to be open and honest with that's what we feel that part of it is about, is to see that and for us to step into that more because it's exciting. Wouldn't it be great, rather than just seeing Lighthouse grow and develop into this thriving church, but actually we saw a network of churches that were growing and thriving and seeing the kingdom expand. But the apostolic route, our Gwreiddiau, is not just a church-wide thing, but also a personal call that is part of being part of Lighthouse. I think each one of us need to explore in our own way. Because there is something, I said, about these fivefold ministries that each one of us need to function in at some part or other. And so what does it mean for us to be an apostle? Us personally as a sent one of Gwreiddiau. Well, in Matthew 28, 16 to 20, we hear the Great Commission. And it says, Then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Then Jesus came to them and said, All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go. Felly ewch I wneud. And make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. Felly ewch I wneud. So go and do. It's another great translation, isn't it? We lose it. Therefore, go. That's a little bit like I say that to my boys. I don't say therefore. I say, oh, clear off. But anyway, that it sounds a bit like a dismissive, doesn't it? But Felly ewch I wneud. Therefore, go and do. This is the Great Commission for us all. It's not just the 11 that were stood there at the time, but it is a call for all of us on our front lines. And if you don't know what that might look like, the London Institute of Contemporary Christianity, LICC, great resource. Go to it. Just Google LICC. They've got loads of things practically about what does it mean to be a sent one into our workplaces, into the spaces that we inhabit. Like we read earlier, Paul and Peter both claimed these titles of being an apostle. They made it a key part of the introduction of who they are. What would it look like for us as individuals here to really know that we are apostles into the places we have influence? And before you say, well, I have no influence anywhere, if you show up somewhere, you have influence. You carry a presence, no matter what you do. You don't have to lead it. You carry influence. And so what if we all took on the intentionality of being an undercover agent for the kingdom? Hint my little ninja there. What if we all took on the intentionality of knowing that actually I am here as an agent for the kingdom of heaven? Or the glasses, what if we ask God as we enter into different spaces that we inhabit, we ask God to give us some new glasses or a new prescription so that we might see clearer what he is doing in that space? What if we reimagined where we all are, all the spaces and places, rather than seeing it as Bumaris Band, the running club, the community cinema, pickleball, Welsh class, dog walking, school gate, work office, out on the food shop, the doctor's surgery, or our family kitchen table. But if we saw each of these with a new intentionality, with a mission, with a clarity of vision, that we are sent ones into these spaces and places, we carry the glory of God with us through the power of the Holy Spirit. We have come from a place of contending for breakthrough. We have come from being on our knees, and then we go with the support of a community, each one of us here around us as the scattered church. We recognize our role as a bridge to the gospel, a force of unity and reconciliation where otherwise there might be division, And as we'll look more into next time, that we have a confidence in the good news of the gospel that has changed and is still changing lives. It's changed my life. It's changed Kate's life. It's changed Jan's life. It's changed Stefan's life. It's changed Steve's life. It's changed Jan's life. It's changed so many lives. Do we have a confidence in that, knowing that that is what we hold? Next slide. What if we saw all these spaces and places as the scattered church on Ennismore and beyond, as mini church plants in the making? Next slide. Ninja. Rachel and I had no special training before planting Gwreiddiau. Yes, we had a leadership investment and a call to start the gathered church, like this kind of more corporate expression. But we see Peter and John in Acts 4, verse 13. It says that they had no special training, yet the people were surprised at how boldly they spoke. And we are all called sent ones, as apostles, into all the spheres of life we are in. Maybe we'll see something in these spaces and places shift if we approach them not with, oh, I'm taking the kids to this, but we approached it as, what if this is a mini church plant? But they just don't know that they're part of my church plant yet. The places that God has called us in this season, if we go in with our antennae out, we are intentionally seeking for God instances to connect with these people of peace that are easy to share the hope of the gospel, or just simply to be a countercultural carrier of the glory of God, bringing unity and honor into these spaces. Like, we as a church collectively have a role to grow into as an apostolic resource. We really believe that has been spoken over us, and we can see that happening already. But also, we as a people, as individuals, have a commission to go, felly ewch I wneud, with intentionality as a sent one, of one with in, carrying the presence of God into each situation.